We are live. Joey, hello, Joey. How you doing, mate?
Good, good. I'm doing great. I missed you last week, man. It's been a week. I feel like I haven't seen you and talked to you. I've seen you on Facebook in a hot tub getting
Yeah.
inappropriate.
I was
No,
on holidays, mate. I was on holidays doing some self care in
yeah,
Byron.
that's cool, dude.
Yeah, cool, mate. Guys, it's actually Good Friday here as well, Joey. I know you're a day behind over there.
Oh, beautiful.
Welcome everyone. Thank you so much to everybody who has been joining us on a weekly basis. And if you're new to the show, welcome to. Thank you. I've got my co-host Joey with us here today, and today we have a very special guest. That's Tabitha from Indiana. Which just reminds me, Joey, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to get a couple of Aussies on the show as well, eh?
I love it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what's coming down the pipe.
All right. So as I said, it's Good Friday. If anyone's actually, let's get Tabitha on first. Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
So,
Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
How's the weather where you are at the moment, Tabitha?
Actually, today it's pretty cold. It's been in the 60s, but it started snowing last night, which is pretty typical of Indiana spring. It's back and forth. So, yeah.
It's beautiful, actually. To me, that sounds beautiful. I couldn't imagine something better right now.
Yeah.
The weather's quite warm where I am here in Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
What about you, Billy?
I think I'm pretty much in the same. It didn't snow here, but the temperatures dipped, and because we had a little taste of 70-degree weather, it feels like a winter day in a way. But I have no complaints. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
So, guys, look, if you are joining us for the first time today, or coming on for to view again, please let us know where you're watching from. Happy Easter long weekend, I guess, to everyone. Joey and Tabitha haven't quite hit that long weekend happening
Yeah.
yet, because you're talking to the future here. Tabitha. It's Friday, 12 p.m. lunchtime here in Sydney. So, guys, yeah, please drop your comments. Let us know where you're watching from. And I'll hand it over to you, Joey. What are we going to talk about today, mate?
Well, I mean, today we're going to talk about overcoming adversity and how that adversity is, if we're paying attention, is a message from the universe as to what direction we could go in as a purpose. I know for me, I've overcome some adversity, and a lot of my mistakes and failures and what I saw as being dealt bad hands are my greatest strengths today to help somebody along the same path. The three of us have something in common, is that we're all three of us are addicts in recovery. Another cool thing is we all got sober in 2009, the same year, which is pretty amazing. We were saying, talking before the show, and I was like, there must have been a disturbance in the force that year for three people like us to get sober. But I think there's lots of different kinds of adversity that people go through. There's, relationship adversity, there's financial adversity, there's abuse and trauma, there's addiction, there's disabilities, there's disease, there's discrimination or oppression. I'd like to today for us to share a little bit about like what our adversity looks like, and how we came out the other side, and then used it as strengths, as gifts, to be of service to others. So I'd like to, if I really like to hear a little bit about your story, Tabitha. We've talked a little bit, and I know you've overcame a tremendous amount of adversity, and now that you've come out the other side, you've made it your life purpose to be of service to others going through the same thing or similar things. So if you're comfortable with sharing with us a little bit about your journey and what it entailed, that would be a good place to start. Kick off a conversation for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I guess first, thank you very much for inviting me on the show to kind of share a little bit about my experiences. I think for me, like Danny had said, I live in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana. I grew up in a broken home. So my parents were divorced when I was about 8 years old. And addiction definitely hit my family hard with my siblings and even my parents some. And so I think even from a very young age, like being around people who used, who lived in poverty, all the different types of adversity that you had mentioned earlier, financial distress, relational distress, all of those things were really just commonplace. Like that's how I grew up. And I think part of that really helped protect me from, I guess, just knowing any different. I think a lot of kiddos growing up in situations that can be difficult, that can even help them get through it, because it's just life, right? Like that's how we grow up. That's what we experience. And I think for me, that was the situation. I started using drugs at a very young age. I went through a lot of sexual abuse, physical abuse, things like that, starting at a very young age. So obviously those things were really difficult to deal with. And then having parents who either drank or used drugs, I didn't really receive a lot of that, I guess, help, assistance, parental guidance that would have helped me get to a place where I knew how to cope with that. And so I did what a lot of my other family were doing at the time and started using drugs. So I started using cocaine about the age of 12, very young, on a daily basis, and really struggled. I know, like, kind of all the way through it, my grandma would take me to church and different things like that. I never really felt connected there. Like I never felt like, they didn't go home and experience what I went home and experienced. And so I think a lot of times we look at other people and think, oh, their life's really together. Like, look at how nice they look. I have people say that to me now, and I just laugh so hard. I'm like, okay. Things aren't always the way they appear, but from a kid growing up kind of in that was my experience. I didn't feel like there was anybody who really understood. And so I got in a lot of trouble, legal issues and things as a kid, and spent from about the age of 14 to almost 18 in the Indiana Department of Corrections in the girls' school. And I was about 17 and a half when I was released, and I went into foster care and aged out of the foster care system. So that's kind of my childhood and things like that. I got pregnant I was 19 when I delivered my oldest daughter, and I literally had no clue how to be a parent, at all. Sometimes she's 19 now. I feel like I still don't. But anyway, I think, kind of going through that experience, I thought for sure like that was going to fix me. Like, oh, I'll be a mom and like now I'll be normal. And my drug use really, really increased. Meth was my drug of choice. Although I had used, quite a few other drugs, meth was the one that really kind of, I guess, grabbed a hold of me and destroyed my life. And so I ended up, I used daily for years until I was 26. Found myself, I got arrested. I was facing a Class A felony for dealing meth when I was 26, and I had these two little girls. And it was really, kind of a wake up call. Like I realized, like I've got to do something different. And so that's kind of what began my journey of getting clean. I don't even know, like, I think in the midst of all of that, how I came to the place, looking back, it's been long enough, where I decided like there was not another option other than to be clean. Like I had literally no other example in my life of what that looked like, how to live a life outside of addiction, or how to live a life where there was not relational trauma every day, things like that. But I got to a place where I just decided, there wasn't another option for my life. Like I could either continue down the path that the rest of my family had and that I had been going down, or I could fight like hell and figure out how I was going to do something different. And so that's really where my recovery journey started. And it's been a really cool story ever since. I don't know. Like, I think in growing up the way I did, I was often told, you're never going to amount to anything. You're dumb. You're stupid. Like all of these things, right, that were being fed into me. And, I really just believed them. I made good grades and things like that in school. And so I'm not really sure. I mean, like logically, it didn't make sense that I believed it, but I did. And I fed into that. And I became who the world around me, statistically and everything, said that I was going to be. And so I decided, I was going to do something different. So I got connected with my local church, and my pastor would come in and see me. And then I decided to go back to school and things like that. So I now work with, and I have for the last 10 years of my 11 years in recovery, worked with incarcerated women. I currently work at a community mental health center doing addictions and mental health therapy. So I went back to school and got my master's degree in social work. And then, now every day I get to do something that's just so cool. It's so fun. I really enjoy, I love people, which is funny because like coming out of my addiction, I thought, oh my God, like being sober is about connection. I'm so screwed. Like I've never had a good connection in my entire life. Like I am totally going to bomb this whole thing. And then, to look at now, like being a therapist and talking about emotion and how that impacts me. And it's funny how things work out like that. But yeah.
Wow. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. That's quite a story, and certainly proof that adversity can be overcome and turned into a gift. Danny, would you like to tell us a little bit about your journey of how you got into recovery?
Look, I wanted to say congratulations.
Thank
you. Also, so much of that story just then, it really hits my heart, and especially growing up in those environments. And the reason it really hits me so hard is I've got a 3.5-year-old daughter who has only known me sober, and I've always given everything of me to her, and being a man in recovery for, 11.5 years, I've got a good idea about what nurture, that stuff, that you talked about missing out on really means. So, it's such a common story. I hear it so regularly on a daily basis when I attend, fellowship meetings, for example, that same thing that you missed out on. And that's why I say congratulations, because it's amazing that we are all here today doing that stuff. And, I also, my story is very similar. I want to acknowledge that the childhood of trauma and abuse, I don't ever really recognize any of it. And in fact, I certainly didn't have. I had one beautiful, loving mum who was always giving me loving and caring stuff. And then I had my old man who kind of taught me everything I know, and that didn't work out too well for me. But, what I do know today is that, the work that I do, and I really related to your bit about the connection in the early days. But I hated people. I thought I hated people when I first got in. It was just fear. I know that today. I was scared shitless of people. I was scared of that connection where you go, hey, mate, how you going? They go, good. How are you? And then that awkward silence, I mentioned that all the time because that's the same feeling, the exact same feeling that I run from for so long. And then we get thrown in the middle of the room and we're suggested that we need to connect with people, and the opposite to addiction is connection. And it was an incredibly scary thing to go through, wasn't it? In those early days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For sure. Look, for me and anyone out there listening who also can relate to some of these experiences. When I got clean, I kind of knew I come to that turning point where I knew if I don't change something dramatically, and for me, I had isolated for so long, even though I was kind of a part of different things, I was always on my own, and recovery taught me to sort of be a part of a bigger thing. And that's when things really dramatically started to change. And it didn't happen straight away. What about for you, Joey? Did it kick in straight away, that connection? Did you enjoy the connection in the very early days? Did you start to feel what intimate relationships were like?
Well, I no. I think the interesting part about all this, and this says a lot about addiction, I think, is what I really can relate to is I didn't have the type of abuse and trauma. I had I mean, every family has dysfunction in it, and there is certainly some things that happened in my family that were violent deaths, murder, suicide, stuff like that, but that I never considered as trauma to me. And I had my mom and my dad, they were together and separate, and that was, kind of them being apart was very normal to me. And I certainly wasn't abused in any way. I've done a lot of deep work in therapy and recovery. And as far as I understand, I don't really have any trauma yet. The feelings that you guys are describing of feeling separate, feeling other than, comparing my insides with other people's outsides is what I really relate to. And that feeling of separateness, not being just a human amongst humans, like not being able to have a real intimate relationship with another human being. We've discussed this before, and I never knew what intimacy meant. I always thought that intimacy meant sex. And when I was in recovery, there was a woman in the rehab that I was in. It was legitimately, I got sober when I was 35, and it was the first person that I actually got vulnerable with. It was the first person that I let in past arm's length, and the only reason being was I was completely defeated. I was broken down, and I let her in enough for her to see that was my biggest fear and she broke it down for me in a way. She's like, you have a fear of intimacy. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I'm
perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I have a need for it, and I'm locked in here with a bunch of dudes. No, but it's she broke it down for me on the board, and she broke it down into 4 words: into me, see. And what it is a fear of letting people to see the real me, because the way I felt about myself was that if you saw the real me, that not only would you be disgusted, but you wouldn't like me. Now, I think that's the nature of the illness, and what it is that you treat it with, whether that be alcohol or drugs, sex, gambling, people, overspending, undereating, overeating, whatever it is, it doesn't necessarily matter. That's the hole that we're trying to fill with these outside things. No, you both relayed that you had a moment where you said, wait a minute, man, I'm at a jumping off place. Like, I'm either gonna choose life or I'm gonna choose death, or there's something different, and I'm making the decision to go down that path. That's not what happened to me. My story is a little bit different, and I don't think it necessarily. I don't know if it really matters. I don't know how common it is, but I also started really, really, really young. Probably like 10 or 11. And, right away, it became my number one priority in life, because it was the only relief that I ever had. And I didn't have any other tools. I had no communication tools. I had no understanding about the nature of my mind, why I thought the way I thought, why I felt the way I felt. I didn't have any communication tools. I didn't have any, I guess, no one really, I didn't really talk about it. but I know that today that's why I chose alcohol and drugs. But it was obvious right away to everybody but me that it was not working for me. I also got in a lot.
I can still hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't hear Joey though.
We lost you, Joey. Tabitha, how's life look for you today over there? What are you doing on a daily basis to look after yourself? And I love the headline on our show around turning our pain and misery into opportunity. Tell me a bit about that. Hopefully Joey gets back on. Sorry, Joey, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I literally every day I am doing something with recovery, whether it be I'm going to meetings and things like that myself, or even just connecting with others in the community. I do sponsor. I'm only sponsoring one young lady right now. I have gotten a lot better at setting boundaries. Like I can't fix everybody and everything, and so that's important. I've got one kiddo left in the house she just turned 17. And so a lot of my time is spent with her. She was diagnosed with brain cancer at the end of 2019. And so a lot of my time is spent there with her. But I think mostly really just like working on connecting with other people. Hey, Joey.
I don't know. I think my internet crapped out.
I think so, yeah.
Sorry about that.
I was just asking Tabitha what life looks like today, and especially mentioning that headline around turning our pain and hurt into opportunity. So please go on, Tabitha. Before you go on back,
yeah, please go on.
How old were you? How long ago did you get clean? So how much of your time clean have you spent with the children in clean time?
Yeah, so it's been 11 years with my kiddos. So my oldest is 19; she's in college, and then my youngest is 17. So they were about 5 and 7-ish when I got clean. Yeah. So they were pretty young, and I do like to talk a lot about that, with my kids especially, because that was such a huge part of my recovery. And even oh my gosh, there's so many different pieces of life that you've got to put back together. Like when you realize things are just crap. So, the headline, turning your pain and suffering into opportunity. I think in order to do that, you have to look for opportunity, right? And one of the things I was actually talking with my daughter before the show came on tonight was, what does that look like? Like, how do you do that? How do we do that as people? And she's like, one of the things she said, I just thought, man, she's such a smart cookie, but it's perspective. Like, how do I view what's happened to me? Like, I can't change the trauma, the bad experiences, my own dumb choices that have traumatized myself, because trust me, there are enough of those. But, yes. I can't change what happens to me. The only thing I have control over is my response to it. And frankly, that's really how I live my life. Like, I can't change even what I decided 5 minutes ago. Like, if I totally blow it as a mom right now, which I do, I can't change that. I can own it, right? And I can move forward, and I can figure out how not to do that again. But if I choose to stay stuck where I'm at and that experience and that bad choice and my past, I'm never going to be able to move forward and turn the pain. And we all have had plenty of pain and plenty of suffering. It's not ever going to be able to be an opportunity, because I'm not open to receive that from the experience, right? I'm stuck in it. I'm stuck focusing on how horrible and awful it was and how it wasn't fair and poor me. And it's not productive.
When did that perspective, because I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know it's that same thought pattern that a lot of people out there absolutely struggle with, looking at the positives rather than focusing on those negatives. So was there a time in recovery that you were able to turn that around, or was that from the beginning of this recovery that you were able to see the positives? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it absolutely was not at the beginning of my recovery.
No way. Fuck this. Yes.
Yeah, not at all. I think a portion of it's definitely started at the beginning of my recovery, and that was with owning what I had done, owning my part of my addiction, it would have been easy to stay stuck in like, okay, my poor childhood and all of this stuff caused me to be where I am. When, sure, it contributed maybe how I cope with things or whatever, but it didn't choose the choice, the choices that I had made. And so I think really understanding that I needed to personally own my part of, where I was at. So it really started, I think, with that honesty and foundation and recovery and understanding through other people who'd been in recovery and those positive connections that that was the foundation. Like if I were ever gonna to get clean and stay clean and figure out how to live different, that it was going to happen on that foundation. And then I think, just it probably was a good couple of years before I quit fighting that that writing reflex, but it wasn't fair, but it, it's not right. I shouldn't have to deal with that, or poor me, or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I totally, it does take time. Thank God you were able to turn that. And I just mentioned that because so often, and please share with us, Joey, what you think too, but so often I know I'm surrounded by people. I actually work in a drug and alcohol treatment center. I have done so for almost a decade now. And I wish, because I know it's changed dramatically for me, my perspective. And in fact, I often even say I love a bit of pain, because sometimes I go so well for a couple of weeks, and then it's like I'm waiting for something to sort of wake me up and just remind me. And then I go through it and I know I can get through anything in recovery and see a positive from it. So often I see those people struggling with that exact thing, having to attend a lot of, appointments to look after ourselves. One thing you mentioned was that reminded me of, we don't need to change much. We just need to change everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wasn't that goal? What do you reckon, Joey?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the perspective shifting. I think all spiritual work is about shifting perspective. And like you guys, it's typically, in order for me to do that, I need it to be in a shitload of pain. And that's where it serves me, is typically when I'm backed up into a corner and I feel a lot of pain and a lot of misery, is the only time I'm really motivated to seek the truth, to accept the truth, and then to move out of it, and use it in my advantage. I can, my recovery was one of a, more of a slow, painful recovery, which I also know served me. You couldn't sell me that, in the first 5-6 years of my recovery, when I was doing everything that I was told to do in regards to my recovery program. And, aside from, I can't say aside from, it's a flat out miracle, and a blessing beyond belief, and absolutely vital that I don't pick up a drink or a drug a day at a time. And I was able to do that. I had that obsession, the drink and use had left me, but I still, I still had no desire to truly live. And part of my recovery story, and we've talked about it here on Own Your Gifts, and when I got sober, and when I was removed from the alcohol and drugs, I got slammed with a lot of the stuff that I was medicating with, the depression, the anxiety, the feelings of being a victim, wallowing in self-pity. And I turned to food, and which I guess is a little more socially acceptable. It probably won't end me up in jail. But I was killing myself. And I went from 220 pounds when I got sober to, I was 415 pounds in March 2015. And, I had hit another bottom in sobriety, and that I didn't know. I became motivated to change, but I had to be in a whole shitload of pain. I was suffering, and the way I see it was, what it feels like. And I wonder if this is a subtle way that my alcoholism, my disease, so to speak, is kind of conning me into thinking that the bottom that I had with food was somewhat a worse bottom, but it felt to me like it more painful, I guess, because the numbing effects of food, isn't quite up to par with like sticking a needle in my arm and guzzling alcohol and everything else. But I was in a whole lot of pain, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and I didn't see a way out. So, again, I know that, that adversity, even though most of my adversity, I'll be completely honest with you, is self-inflicted. Almost all of my adversity is self-inflicted. So I need to take responsibility for that. At the same time, give myself permission to be human. And that's the balancing act, I think. And it's the ego mind. The ego mind, it automatically, it's like, some people, you guys were talking about blaming others, for your problems, and I understand why it's like that's a go-to, like that's an ego thing, like that's the ego automatically puts us in the position of either inferior or superior, which is separate. There's no connectedness when we're separating ourselves from others and positioning ourselves in either a superior or inferior position. And I'm doing that it does it on its own. Almost any time I'm interacting with other people, my brain will automatically like start weighing shit out and being like, okay, am I inferior or superior? But I come from a mindset of, my default mindset is it's all my fault. Like it's always all my fault. Like there's no one else plays another part. And and I only see where I fall short, and I only see where I fall enough. And I only see of like what I can't get, and what I want that I can't have, or what I have that somebody's going to take. And it's self-centeredness beyond. It's not like, it's like I can't see past my own face to even blame you. Like I can't even to even see the reality of a situation that, hey, I mean, I know it takes two to tango, and almost everybody plays a part in any type of interactions, whether that's allowing somebody to treat me a certain way or not treating myself with respect. But it was really hard for me to see where I was of any worth whatsoever, or where I may have been, taken advantage of in the same way. I only one part of what we do, at least I'm assuming most programs of recovery, but I got sober in a 12-step program. And part of what we do there is a moral inventory where, we're supposed to uncover the what our human shortcomings are. And we're supposed to, uncover it and, become aware of and accept how we hurt others. And to dig up those resentments, which, so to speak, and clean it up and see our part. And the first time I took those 12 steps, I had one resentment. I had lived out there, for 25 years, and I've had lots of interactions with lots of different people. And I had a really nasty bottom. So the type of life that, and the type of people that you're surrounding yourself with, and the type of shit that you're doing, there were situations where I guess I would have some sort of right to be able to see someone else's wrong. But I had one resentment, and it was me. And I couldn't see anything further than that. And it was like that for a while. But you know what? That seemed to be good enough. I just, We
lost your audio, Joey. You're on mute. We've lost his audio. Hey, anyone out there, let us know if you can relate, because I know we can all relate to that food issues. Yeah, Joey, you're on mute. Like it's showing up that you're on mute. We've lost your audio, but that was one of the big things. And that saying, like, we put down the spoon and picked up the fork, to feed our
yeah, I did that.
Absolutely. We got to that. So, yeah, please let us know if anyone out there does relate to that overeating and feeding our feelings. with foods. I just wanted to say hello to Michael. Thanks for joining us, Daniel and Justin as well. And one of the things you just reminded me of in that was going back a little bit, and I'd love to hear from you, Tabitha, on this one. So often, I also have clients, people share about like, when is it going to get better? I haven't changed. And one of the big things that significantly changed for me in the early days was I lost that obsession and compulsion to use.
Yeah.
I'm blessed, and it took 50 different attempts at trying to get there. But for me, it was around, and this is amazing, I know, but it was around about day 70 that I came so close to using and I didn't. And I never really, and this is insane, but I never really come close to picking up again. And to grasp that concept, I know for anyone out there struggling, probably seems like they go, maybe this guy didn't use like me. But for 17 years, I tried to get that. But did you have a time, Tabitha, when you lost that obsession and compulsion to use and became looking? Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that time was when I lost myself in creating somebody else. Like when my focus shifted from constantly fighting that mental battle to really believing. And I like what Joey was sharing, even like, there's kind of an internal battle that takes place there. We can shift addictions like that, but until I can view myself as capable of something more, I'm forever going to be where I'm at. And if we continue believing that lie, that internal dialogue, until my internal dialogue shifted from and even my perception of who I was as just being a drug addict, like, oh, okay, I'm the drug addict I'm a convicted felon, I'm this, I'm that, until it shifted into the realm of possibility that I could be somebody different, that I really could create a life for myself that didn't involve like constantly obsessing over it. And I think just practically speaking, when I stopped letting myself sit there and think about using all day, because frankly, like you could stay in this state of constantly being triggered and kind of amped up, right? And recognizing like, if I keep doing this, I'm not going to ever move past where I am,
It really was almost like, and this sounds insane, but that I get that. It's like the day when I just finally got, just shut up, Danny. Why are you doing this to yourself?
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy to think it was that simple, but that was the day I sort of let go of, because that's the pain, isn't it? That's the torture. That's the self-harm we do to ourselves and to our poor little heads, torturing ourselves with that day and day. And then I realized, no, I'm not going to do that no more. And it slowly began to change,
Yeah, and it's empowering. Like I can remember like what you were sharing too, like being offered dope and feeling, once I got past being triggered and just like literally just shaking, like, oh my gosh, but just being so shocked, like, oh my God, I just turned down dope. Like, am I really, like, I must be really changing. Like, that's crazy, to think that I did that. And letting those experiences really start to define who I was becoming and understanding like, wow, it was empowering. Like, I really can do this. I think the other really big part of it is like, social support. Like I had so many people in my corner and I didn't deserve any of them. I mean, I was, horrible in my addiction. And I feel so blessed that I've had so many people, whether it be family or friends, people in my church, whatever, come alongside me and just let me know like, hey, we're rooting for you, and using those supports, but beginning to see myself differently, like, and not just as the person that was going to struggle in addiction every day. I could be something different if, I fought like hell to be something different. And I believe that, and I still do. I'm 11 years clean and sober, so I feel like it's somehow it's working for me. So,
right?
Yeah.
For sure. Joey, we've got about 6 minutes to go, man. I'd love to hear from Tabitha around, around that opportunity. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing today in business, in your work. Let us know a little bit how you've created changed all of that stuff to the opportunities you have today, please, Tabitha?
Yeah, for sure. So I do a lot of work with women in recovery. Obviously, that's kind of where my passion is. So I go into our local jails and I do ministry with a lot of the women who are in there and just stuck in there. There's a program that I'm involved with that's called JCAP. It's the Jail Chemical Addiction Program that our county has implemented. Just like they have recovery programs in prisons, this is for like county jails. So I'm involved with that. I go into our work release program and meet with the ladies in there. But a lot of my like professional work is focused on women who have trauma and substance use. And so obviously out of my own experiences of all different kinds of abuse and things like that, and addiction combined together, you know, those things really do go hand in hand. And not everybody, like Joey was saying, has had that experience, but so many men and women, I work with men as well, but mainly women have gone through that. So I just kind of pour my heart into that. I'm really involved in my church and try to be as involved in ministry as I can. It's definitely something that's helped keep me grounded and focused. But yeah, that's really where I spend all of my free time, just pouring into other people in recovery, because it's like probably the most fun thing that I ever do. So
service, isn't it? That's the answer, isn't it? I got told that in the early days, you know, the more we give, the happier we'll be. I thought, what? And like the more we give, the happier I'll be. But that's exactly what I'm hearing from you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. It's what I was told is that in order for me to keep it, I need to be giving it away. So it's not even what I'm going to receive. It's in order for me to keep my sobriety, I need to be giving it away. And like me, I my pain, like my pain of my past and active addiction, my pain and suffering in recovery, the first 5 or 6 years of my recovery pointed me towards my purpose. And my purpose is to, I work with people in addiction to help supplement their current programs of recovery, or if they're free from their addiction and don't have a program of recovery, help them to create something, a program of recovery that works for them. And, more importantly is what I found about my recovery was, when they tell you that this is your primary purpose, like my primary purpose is to stay sober and to help somebody else to stay sober, but it's primary. Like, it's foundational, it's vital, but there's more. And I didn't know that I got to choose, that I got to be able to choose who it was, who did I want to be? Like, what type of man did I want to be? What type of legacy did I want to leave? What type of life did I want to create for myself? I wasn't trying to get back, I wasn't trying to get back anything, because I never had anything to get back. It's like, I felt broken before I even picked up a drink and a drug, but I also didn't know that I had a choice of who I wanted to be. And then I was able to design that. And I was able to design that and to break it down into small steps and go after that consistently, day in and day out. And what I found is that I'm I'm pretty much whatever I pay attention to. Like, so I'm what I do when nobody's watching. And so I get to decide what that is. So I'm passionate about what I'm doing. But if I didn't hit another really bad bottom in sobriety, where I wasn't drinking or using drugs, and I was involved in a program of recovery, but I was barely surviving, and I still wanted off the planet. If I hadn't hit that bottom, I would have kept going the same way that I was. So, like, you would think that I would have some sort of understanding that some of the adversity that I've overcome and some of the transformations I've had in my life, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, including overcoming addiction, that would be what direction I should be going in. But it never really never really landed with me. You know, I was plugged into the personal development world, mostly out of like necessity and desperation to get my health back under control and get my life back under control and learn some tools to live. But I never thought about becoming a coach. I was working in a wood shop. I worked in a wood shop for decades. That was my identity. I built custom furniture, and it was something that I really loved to do. But when the romance was over and I felt like I needed something more, and this is the case a lot of the times, is somebody saw me what I couldn't. And they're like, well, listen, you need to be going in this direction because this is where you could be of most service. And a light went off. And, you know, that's where Efficacy Life Coaching was born. And I started to slowly move in that direction.
Oh, Joey, we lost you again, mate. Your audio's gone. No.
He said, "I'm done."
I'm done.
There you are. You're back.
I'm done. Let's call it. Let's move it on.
Yeah, sure, Joey. Look, we're coming to the end of the show. I think we should wrap it up shortly. What were we going to finish off with today, Joey?
I mean, we always like to finish off some way, you know, give somebody some kind of tip or some kind of tool of you know, how we increase our happiness. How do we increase our joy? How do we find more peace? How do we plug into the higher force of gratitude? So for me, you know, this is one of the things that produced an instant change in my life in recovery, and I always did it in a very sporadic way, and is to be really hyper vigilant about the way that I spoke to myself. Like I made it like negative self-talk, you know, no negative self-talk, no exceptions, no matter what. And that was really hard for me. And like when I began to do that and made that my number one priority, I started to see the light. So if you're somebody out there who speaks to their self and, you know, in a way that is less than empowering or quite frankly abusive, there's nothing about self-talk that negative self-talk that motivates or you know, somehow is useful in any way. And that's a really good place to start, is to be really aware and conscious of the way that you're speaking with yourself.
Good on you. Joey, what have you got for us, Tabitha?
I think, yeah, for me, I'm going to go with grace, giving yourself grace to completely royally blow it and still love yourself. And I think going back to that not allowing yourself to have that negative self-talk, but I think intentionally choosing to forgive yourself, to love yourself, not even despite your flaws, but because of your flaws, because that's what makes you human and relatable. And that's what makes you you. And so I think learning to really embrace that and intentionally choosing when I begin to discount, you know, whatever flaws or perceived flaws I have as a person, you know, not letting myself continue in those thoughts, but feeding myself positive things and giving myself grace. When I do make a mistake, own it, move forward and leave it where it's at. Don't stay stuck.
Thank you, Tabitha.
Thanks so much, Tabitha. And you know, we talked about connection today, and I think just to go back to that, and I guess this is a little bit of service too, but I think, and my little tip to increase our levels of happiness, and I know I have shared this before, but this one works for me every single time, is to share, to be kind, like get out of my comfort zone kind, you know, and say hello to somebody, a random person, somebody you don't know, because I know for a fact that me doing this for years, I often get people who come back to me years later. I'm talking about people that I've met through the fellowships, and they remembered that kind hello and warm welcome. And when I hear stuff like that, and it might be years later, it absolutely reminds me how precious this gift that we have all been given. And it's this gift to be ourselves, isn't it? It's this gift to be brave, to have some courage, and to sort of share the love and kindness with everyone out there. So I definitely would highly recommend that. As crazy as it might seem, how is saying hello to a stranger, saying thank you to the bus driver, engaging in a little bit of conversation, how is that going to increase my levels of happiness? I just want to say give it a go and do it regularly. And I believe it'll absolutely change those levels of happiness.
Yeah.
Can I ask you both, let's finish on this. And actually, before we do that, there's been a few comments to Joey should get back to Justin on that. And just hello to Justin once again, to Matt. Hello to Daniel. Hello to Michael and everyone else who has joined us today live without commenting. It's been a pleasure to have you guys with us, and I hope you guys have enjoyed our stories. And Joey, no, actually, let me start with you, Tabitha. If you could say something to yourself 5 years down the track, have a think about this too, Joey. Like, what would you say to yourself in the future?
Like 5 years down the road?
Yeah, what would you say to yourself?
Oh man, just go for it. Stop holding yourself back. Just that's what I would say for sure. Just do it. Whatever it is.
Yeah, do it. Good on you, Tabitha. What about you, Joey? What would you say to yourself 5 years down the track?
Let people see you. You know, just continue to let people see the real me. I have this dream. Interesting enough, I'll be really quick. I know we got to get off, but I have this dream often, and in the dream, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm shaving my head, and it's like I don't know anything about analyzing dreams, but I think that's what the dream is telling me. The dream is telling me is to like let people see you. Well, Danny, you're way ahead of us all. You got this.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Just continue to be authentic and vulnerable, and to take more risks and keep my heart open. Yeah,
I didn't give you much of a chance to think about it. It's something I do think about often, and it's one of the questions I ask the guys at work. I think for me, I know, and of course you guys know this, I so much can change dramatically in our lives, can't it too? So I certainly hope that I am okay. I hope that I continue moving forward. And I love this, like, dream big. Like, I hope I continue to dream big, because it's one of the gifts that I've been given through recovery, is to sort of expand my life, and we can do anything, can't we? Like, do you believe that? I can do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'm constantly, my life is constantly showing me like what I think is possible and what's actually possible are extremely misaligned. I'm always underselling myself, and I could throw that on there too.
Justin says that. Look, I would say, look how little you knew 5 years ago. Imagine what you'll know in 5 more. True, eh? That's so true too, isn't it? Thanks, Justin. Like, it's amazing that the stuff I have learned. I've been like in this business journey or this entrepreneurial journey for about 2 years. Like, I hated school. Like, I left school very young too. So, but isn't it amazing when you're really passionate about something, and let's say recovery as well? Like, we are studying life. That's what I'm doing. I'm studying life, and I'm really freaking good at it too, actually, So imagine how much more we're going to learn 5 years down the track.
Yeah, I love that. That was good, yeah.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. Thank you so much, Joey. Hang around for a sec. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Justin. I'll just end the broadcast. We'll see you guys next week. Next week, we're going to hopefully get an Aussie on to talk about the struggle of gambling, which is obviously such a massive concept that everyone has at least a loved one who struggles with that, and share his experiences with recovery. So we'll see you guys next week. I'll just end the broadcast, guys.